Hi, it's Thursday and this is Thaiger Bites. Jay's with me to go through your comments. Let's get started.
Right, here we go. My first comment here today, Tim, is regarding the vaccines. So you recently said in the last 2 days that you got your second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. I've already got my 2 jabs of Sinovac a couple of months ago. So I have a comment here from Saranya who says, how did Jay get 2 jabs and how far apart is it because you're on Phuket? Also, what is the situation now with the Sandbox test? Is it a success or more tweaks? And then I have another comment here from Martin who further elaborates and says, Jay is obviously not 60. That is a very good observation, Martin. And he says, I hope he's not vaccine VIP jumping the queue.
The situation is that here in Phuket, as a sandbox zone, they were trying to get 70% of the population vaccinated before they reopen. It was one of the conditions the Thai government put. So people who got work permits here, particularly people in the hospitality industry, all ended up at the front of the queue. So it's not as if we're jumping queues. Because we got work permits, we were sort of put at the front of the queue, just the way it is.
Yeah, and we were actually one of the last peoples to be able to register for the vaccine on Phuket. Obviously, the Thai nationals got the first chance to register for the vaccine. However, as soon as we were allowed, we registered through the legal means, the right means, no skipping. So that's how I got my 2 doses.
So the big story today, or the last couple of days, has been this video that's been circulating on the internet and the stories surrounding this missing policeman, the chief of the Nakhon Sawan police station, and the actions that were happening during that video that we don't have to go through again. I think you all know by now exactly what's happened. Truth Seeker said the guy who put the bag over his head should receive the death penalty and the rest should get locked up for a minimum of 10 years. The death penalty still applies in Thailand, although, as we've commented many times, it's usually commuted. When I say usually, just about every single time to a life sentence. Santi Viet said that was the regular in Thaksin times. Nothing has changed, alluding there to Thaksin Shinawatra, the Prime Minister at the start of this century, who ran what was known as the war on drugs, where they were literally going out with extrajudicial killings and taking matters into their own hands. Did it solve Thailand's drug situation? Obviously not, but that's what he's referring to. Marco Stefano, talking about the same topic, says the police incident was just a case of misunderstanding and all will be sorted out over a cup of tea and a bunch of flowers. Oh, and by the way, this won't be the first killing these bastards have done. And finally, on that topic, Brian Brown chimed in and he said, great respect and fair play to the decent and brave cops for leaking this footage. This must be indisputable evidence to convict them. Of course, we'll leave the Thai courts to make that decision.
Moving on to another topic, I have a comment here from Pat Gapao talking about Thailand being a developed nation. Now, he's specifically referring to a story about an electrician who unfortunately died while working on an electric pole in Thailand. And he says, with regard to the poor guy that turned up to work as an electrician and never made it home, Thailand believes to be considered a developed nation. They need shiny new malls and tourists spending overseas money. However, sad that they overlook the fact that developed is tied to such things as health and safety, minimal corruption, functional democratic elected government, and welfare. Now, he does have a point here, Tim. So let's talk about this. Some people say Thailand is developed, certain parts of the countries are, most parts of the countries are not. What do you think?
Well, I think the term developed or third world or developed countries is sort of thrown around quite often. Thailand, after living here for 10 years, in some ways to me seems very developed, but in other ways, perhaps alluding to this occupational health and safety issue with the electrician, it's not so much that it's undeveloped, but there are rules in place, but they're not so rigorously applied or enforced. So it's a bit difficult to put Thailand into any particular box, calling it developed, undeveloped, third world. When it comes to things like Wi-Fi and speeds and the internet, it's way ahead of many what you would call first world countries. So it's a bit of a hard thing to actually pigeonhole Thailand in a box, I think. Brian Brown again has spoken up. He mentioned the case. I think Jet mentioned it in Thailand News Today yesterday as the final story. A gentleman who is clearly tired and emotional, I think we could say, who was caught on CCTV of rearranging or upsetting a whole lot of tables and chairs in a restaurant, but took the time whilst he was... also, he didn't have any pants on. But he took the time to get some alcoholic gel and wipe down some of the tables and chairs, which was very thoughtful of him. So Brian Brown says, what a guy, effing legend in my book, 50-odd years old, no pants on, breaking into a restaurant, smearing alcohol gel all over the tables. Reminds me of my acid-induced youth. Find him and get him on the show. Got to be a story behind this, LOL. Thanks, Brian.
I have two comments here regarding the restrictions and the Phuket Sandbox in general. So Somchai first says, talking to Mike, let's be honest, no one is coming during these mad times. Who's going to come and put up with this madness when you can go to Spain and have no restrictions? Go Inghwa, who says, talking to me now, says, Jay, you are wrong. Thailand is not expensive at all. It's cheap. That's why people travel for holidays. It's not a matter of expense or cheap, as going for holidays is to spend money. Okay, so firstly, I don't understand why people compare places like Spain, and especially I see comments about Maldives and Thailand. I don't know if you've actually been to Maldives. I have. It is 10 times more expensive than Phuket. What I mean that Phuket is expensive to come right now, it's going through all the documents, paying for the SHA plus hotels.
Insurance.
Exactly, insurance. It costs a lot of money to enter Phuket. But once you're in Phuket, yes, the food, the travel costs are not expensive. Places like Maldives are completely different. Yeah, extremely expensive, in my opinion.
I would say the cost of living in Thailand depends a lot on where you actually are.
Yes.
Even on the island of Phuket, one side of the island is almost twice the price in accommodation, food, travel costs than the other side of the island.
Yes.
If you go to places like Udon Thani or Khon Kaen, you'll find living cost and the cost of food much less. Bangkok, a little bit higher. It really depends where you live. And what I like about Thailand is that you can find a level of expenditure which suits your budget.
Yep.
That's one of the great things about this country. And even on the island of Phuket, places like Samui, you can also find quite cheap places to live and cheap places to eat. It's not going to be in Boput or in Chawang, but you can find those sort of places even on the holiday islands.
That's correct.
I've got one from Ralph Lewis. Which camera? This one.
Yes.
I wonder if the Thai government will exempt Pfizer from all liability like the US did. I certainly hope not. Allow people to have recourse in the case of any ill side effects. Now, a lot of governments around the world are exempting the manufacturers of the vaccines from, they're giving them indemnity in case there are people who are getting sick or, in the worst case scenario, actually dying after having the vaccine, whether or not they can prove that the vaccine caused that particular death. So Ralph has told us what he thought. We've got another one there.
All right. My last comment here today, taken from Facebook, is from Jeff Stuckey, who wrote a comment on one of our stories about the Bangkok Sandbox and how in the Bangkok Sandbox they're going to be opening businesses only to vaccinated customers.
This has only been announced like in the last 12 hours.
Yes. So Jeff Stuckey says, another half-baked idea. I wish these people would think before opening their mouths and inserting a foot. What do you think about this, Tim? Opening businesses only to vaccinated customers in a place like Bangkok where there's a lot of cases and a shortages of vaccine?
Yeah, well, Bangkok's pretty early on in the vaccine rollout compared to some of the holiday locations like Samui Plus and Phuket Sandbox, where the vaccines have sort of been concentrated over the past couple of months. They're catching up pretty fast, but it is still slow. I think we've mentioned a few times that we're entering a period now in the COVID narrative of what I suppose I'd call COVID apartheid, where we're going to have businesses and aeroplanes and hotels that are going to be open for people who are vaccinated only, and those who are not vaccinated, either because they just haven't been able to get to the front of the queue, or because they decide personally they don't want to be vaccinated, are going to be sort of separated from the rest of society. Yeah. Going to be a strange time, but yeah, here we're seeing it. They're talking about in Bangkok opening restaurants, but only to fully vaccinated customers. You're going to sit in there eating your food, sort of waving to the poor people outside
that's exactly what
haven't been vaccinated.
A lot of people have different reasons for why they haven't been vaccinated yet. What are they going to shoo away the people that haven't been vaccinated? It doesn't sound right to me.
So, believe me, I think the next 6 months, this whole vaccine apartheid right around the world is going to become a bit of a thing. Finally, from Edward Wigmore, and Edward responded to another vaccine story and said, the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines have been available in the UK and other countries for months. Why has it taken Thailand so long to get this far? Lives have been unnecessarily lost and affected by this delay. Why has Thailand been so slow in rolling out the vaccines?
Well, firstly, they didn't allow private hospitals to acquire the vaccines that they wanted to. They decided to take matters into their own hands. Then they said that they would produce the AstraZeneca vaccine in Siam Bioscience by themselves.
That's been moderately successful.
They've made some promises and they haven't, delivered.
Yes, they haven't delivered to the same extent of their promises.
Well, not even close, let's be honest.
Right, there you go. But I think the main reason is that last year, Thailand was just so successful in keeping the number of cases low, the number of deaths low. They seem to have been containing the virus. And I believe what happened in April, following Songkran, really surprised them. And the numbers, of course, have just exploded. At the same time, the Delta virus, the Delta variant, has been a part of this huge spread that only now seems to be slowly trending down. So I think that's the main reason that there's been a delay. I think it literally took the officials by surprise. Okay, that's Tiger Bites for today. This program we do every single day. We go through your comments on some of our platforms. What are the platforms?
Facebook, YouTube, Thaiger Forum on our website.
Thaiger Talk. And of course, YouTube is one where we get a lot of comments directly, which we also read out. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for your comments. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.